Welcome to the President and CEO Focus on the Middle Market podcast series, where President and CEO founder Paul Stukel discusses middle market issues with business leaders from across the nation. Today, in part 2 of a 3-part series, Paul speaks with Ken Esch, partner of PwC's Private Company Services, about the encouraging results of their second quarter Trendsetter survey of private middle market companies.
You know, and another thing that I thought was intriguing was, in terms of the spending, it would appear that at long last, the private companies, you know, and most of which we would consider to be middle market type of companies, have begun to embrace the investment in big data, you know, right, in terms of analytics. That the uncertainty surrounding that seems to have faded a little bit because it sounds like people are getting a lot more aggressive with it. I mean, is that the take you took as well?
Yeah, I think that's accurate. The pace of change, in the technology area, including, cloud computing applications, have leveled the playing field, in a lot of respects, for smaller companies, and they're using those technology applications to help drive efficiency and profitability in their business. And one area where they definitely see opportunity is analyzing the data that they have with respect to their customers and their potential customers, and ingraining that level of data analytics into decisions about what they're doing from an investment perspective and how they're marketing their products and services. So it's not just limited to big companies. Smaller middle market companies are actively engaged in data analytics as well.
And the overall spending in technology is really accelerating, it would appear.
Yeah.
I was particularly intrigued by the 3D printing element of it. I mean, that sort of has, in a stealthy sort of way, that seems to be gaining a lot of momentum. I mean, anecdotally, does that ring true to you? Because it sure seems that way to me.
It does. We're seeing quite a bit of activity, in the media and reporting in that area about the 3D printing. It is a viable, manufacturing alternative, and it seems to be, gaining, some strength. Although there's still, a very small percentage of the total manufacturing environment. It is out there. It does look like a wave of the future, and would expect, it to continue to gain momentum over time.
Yeah.
Other areas where they're, spending a fair amount of, money is, in the technology, space, and we've seen just an unbelievable acceleration of change, over the last, 5+ years. So some of the companies that deferred a lot of capital expenditures and even maintenance, coming out of the recession, are back in the game and really trying to catch up with the pace of change in technology. And manufacturing equipment, has changed dramatically as well, and companies need to make some investments there to be able to compete.
The other interesting thing that the growth barriers, everything sort of declined. If there's an example of optimism amongst the CEOs or the executives that you speak to, it's that. I mean, every single one of them, with the exception of the lack of qualified workers, which seems to be becoming more and more chronic. And I guess the oil energy prices thing went up by very much, but everything else went down. That's amazing. That's really astonishing.
Yeah, as you and I have talked before, one of the key areas that I've focused on is just the lack of demand for products and services, which is always kind of at the top of the list. But that's dropped dramatically over the last year or two, in just the percentage of individuals reporting that as a barrier. And you did note one that's quite interesting to me is the lack of qualified workers, and we've also discussed in the past that while that is an area of concern, for the reports in the past, it's usually registered in the mid to high 20 percentile, jumped up to about 1 in 3, which is consistent with what we're hearing in the market from our clients and other companies. that there is just a lack of qualified workers out there to fill positions that are available. And companies have looked at a variety of alternatives of how to address that situation, but it's becoming more pronounced.
Yeah, no, it's again, it's one of those major head scratchers that you just it's an indictment of a lot of things, I think. But boy, oh boy, it's something that certainly has to be changed. And obviously, and it flows into so many sort of broader political conversations, right? It flows into our education system. It flows into immigration, right? Because clearly that's why the chamber and those guys are pushing. One of the reasons they're pushing immigration, a much more liberalized immigration system. With the idea of basically bringing in people that know what that have the right skills. And I just, it's a head scratcher. It really is. But boy, you're right. It's becoming more and more pronounced.
One of the things that is in the report this time around, if we dig a little bit deeper, is that 67% of the participants told us that they're going to increase their spending to attract, retain, and develop their people. Which I think follows along with some of the readings that we're hearing about lack of qualified workers. Number one is that we're going to maintain the qualified workforce that we have today, and then perhaps secondly, we want to develop our people and our newer hires so that they contribute quickly to the success of the organization. And then another area that we've seen is that companies are kind of reaching out to trade schools and community colleges to help develop some curriculum to train potential job candidates for them. So it's really a multi-pronged approach to deal with this growing problem of lack of qualified workers.
The other thing that struck me from the barriers, and I think I had mentioned this before in a previous conversation with you, but it kind of makes me chuckle, I must tell you, that everything that relates to the government is going down in terms of being considered a barrier. And the only conclusion I can come up with is gridlock is good. Gridlock
I
is
think
good.
That's true. Yeah.
It's really amazing.
Yeah. The concerns about regulatory environment certainly increase when we hear noise from Washington about additional regulatory type of pressures or new programs out there. So I think as we try to climb out of this recession, there's a pretty common view out there that companies would just prefer that government kind of stay out of the way while they continue to grow their business.
Check back tomorrow for part 3 of our discussion with Ken. Thanks for listening.